Good afternoon, everybody, and sorry if I fall asleep, just clap or do something. Scream, shout. It's a real pleasure to be here, and I want to thank Amplify, I want to thank AMP, and I want to thank PwC and Strategy and for today. Let me just say a little bit about what I do. I'm not here to talk about PwC as such, but I lead a team in the UK that does crowdsourced innovation as a service to our clients. So what we've done is we've taken crowdsourcing and we've kind of flipped it on its head, where we offer our people as a crowd to our clients. So instead of 3 or 4 or 5 experts to deal with a client and the issue that they might be having or the opportunity that they have, we offer 17,000. And we use our people, we motivate our people to solve that problem. Our plan is to roll this out globally. We will soon be able to offer 200,000 people in 152 countries. That's the program that I run with a partner in the UK who's on the board, Dan Schwartzman. So the reason why I joined PwC was to run that program. But I'm not here to talk about that. What I want to talk is really more kind of personal view of what I see as some of the big challenges that are facing us, and following on from what was said, slightly nuanced view on this question of disruption and where all this is going. First, I'd like to just ask a question. How many of you in this room know what the jade rabbit is? One.
It's a Chinese lander on the moon.
Chinese lander on the moon. Thank you. How many of you have seen a video on YouTube produced by GE called Fire with Fire, which shows the story of some scientists in America who reprogrammed genetically the HIV virus to attack leukemia cells and solved a virulent form of cancer? Anybody seen that? We've got 2. Wow, it's going up. That's like a 100% increase on the last one. How many of you have heard of Facebook? How many of you have heard of Twitter? Instagram? Okay, you can see the point I'm going to be making. My point is this, that when we talk about technology today, for some reason, we're not excited by the transformative things that are going on, the kind of earth-shattering things where we are altering nature to transform the world around us. We seem to be obsessed with technologies that are all about self-obsession. They're all about expressing our feelings. It's all about sharing. It's all about inward looking. It's like we are looking at our screens and we're not going out there and doing what we've done in the past, which is to go where no man has gone before. We seem to be obsessed with our inner worlds. We are obsessed with these little screens rather than the big challenges that seem to face us. And I think this is a very interesting phenomenon to me because it's a very serious question. I don't raise this, I'm not flippantly suggesting that Facebook or any of these things are not important. I think they are. I think they're not very well understood, which I'm quite happy to discuss with you afterwards. But I think what seems to be happening is that we've become a lot happier and a lot more comfortable when we're looking at the sphere of consumption, when we're looking at ourselves, where we're looking at things that have become predictable now. So everybody can predict. They can predict into the future. There'll be so many devices. There'll be so many, and people are going to be texting. They're going to be sharing pictures. They're going to be doing all of that kind of stuff. We're looking, it seems to me, we're becoming comfortable where we are looking for predictable outcomes, where we can predict the future, where we can feel safe that this is where things are going to go, even though we're not 100% sure what this might look like. So we use the term disruption in these terms. But why aren't we talking about the power of digital technologies, which would allow us to wriggle free from the limitations imposed upon us by nature? that could create a speedier, wealthier world, that could create new industries, which would create new areas of employment, rather than looking for doing what we're doing today. And what I really want to focus on in this little chat that I'm going to have with you is I want to look at what I think is really happening in innovation. Is that I think we've lowered our expectations about innovation and about technology. And I actually think that we're closing down the future rather than opening it up. And I want to do that by looking specifically at things like big data, the big debate, and about examples like the driverless car, for example, which everybody's getting very excited about. But before I do that, let me just give you my tuppence of why I think this is happening. I think it's because, as a society, I'm talking mainly about Western societies, we've become very uncomfortable with the idea of progress. We've become very cynical about science and about expertise. We are very concerned about the kind of unexpected things that happen as a result of innovations that have happened in the past. And so what we're tending to do is we're looking for security blankets. We're looking for predictability. Now, if you take something like big data, now for me, big data is a phenomenal development. It has got such potential for transforming the world that we're in. If you look at something like the God particle, the Hadron Collider, that would never have been possible without big data. If you look at the way big data is being used, for example, by the airline industry to predict weather patterns tied to the wear and tear of sensors in the engines, etc., where they can predict when they need to take a plane out of service so it can be serviced before it becomes chronic. The way they've changed their supply chain, all of this, all connected with this data. It's the savings and the potential of this are absolutely enormous. Los Angeles uses now sensors and weather traffic tied to traffic lights and everything, where they've smartened their grid and they've reduced congestion by about 38%. It's the most congested city in the United States. Absolutely fantastic. But when I look at some of the debate about big data and about analytics, I get really nervous about some of the stuff, the focus of where this seems to, where everybody starts getting excited. So when you look at this with the Internet of Things that everybody's talking about, where we can get all this data around us, we can gather all this data from sensors in the environment, the devices that we carry around with us, etc. And through that, we'll be able to present this back to you in a kind of visualization of things that you might not be aware of, which might then be able to allow you to make better decisions about what you are doing with your life. You used to stop and now, that sounds great at one level. And the guys that are selling this are very good at telling that story about what great insights this is going to. But if you stop and think about that for a minute, what is being posed here is that you can actually, by understanding what you've done in the past, it can predict what you might do in the future. And by gathering all this stuff, you're going to be able to somehow make people's decision-making and what they might be doing in the future more predictable. Now, I don't think that that's the case. I think the wonderful thing about human beings is that they're not predictable. And that's where our creativity comes from. That's where our problem-solving capacity really comes from. The idea that we can, through data capture of things that we've done in the past, be used to inform what we might do in the future, says to me that what you're really doing is you're closing down the space for human creativity, for that spontaneity. Because one of the greatest things that we have, and you're going to find this very strange coming from somebody who's passionate about innovation, is our capacity to make mistakes. It's our capacity to fail that actually motivates us more than our capacity for success. Because success can be the result of accidental things that come together at a particular moment in the market or whatever. Our ability to fail and to learn from failure, that is really where the spark of creativity comes from, where the motivation to do better really comes from. And so what are we being told about big data? We're being told that this actually can become more an algorithm based on if-then kind of logic, is going to be able to tell us morally and ethically, and in every sense in creativity, will be able to be a better predictor of what we might do than ourselves. I think that's diminishing us as people, and I think that's really diminishing what you could actually do with this big data. By the way, I'm a great advocate of all this technology. I'm wearing an Apple Watch. I don't know how many of you have got one of these. They're fantastic. You know, they tell you every 10 minutes to stand up, and they just tell you to do certain things. They also tell me sometimes when my blood pressure starts getting a bit high that I should sit down. So if I sit down suddenly, you'll understand why I'm doing that. So when I look at this technology, you know, so I love it. I think it's great. I think the fact that we are walking around with devices in our hands that have got more processing power and computational power than the craft that landed on the moon, each one of us is carrying this today, is a fantastic achievement. But ladies and gentlemen, when I look at Facebook and I think this was the largest IPO in history, technology IPO in history was Facebook. Think about that for a minute. The largest technology IPO was Facebook. Not a product, not a service that is transforming the world. It's basically you and I sharing our data amongst ourselves. That this was the biggest technology IPO in history. Now, that says to me something is really awry here. There's something really, really bad going on here. And I looked into this a little bit further, and I came up with a number of really astonishing statistics, which really tells you something about where we're at. Do you know that in 2010, US consumers spent $2 billion more on crisps than the federal government invested in energy R&D? My watch is saying, watch out for your blood pressure. In 2012, the Federal Reserve in the United States estimated that of all the publicly traded US firms had cash holdings of nearly $5 trillion. $5 trillion, that's a third of the USA GDP. Cash reserves not being invested, sitting and waiting maybe to buy another company, but not being invested in anything like R&D. Nothing. Apple, 760 billion. I read it in the flight coming over. It's one of the things I do remember about the flight coming over. 760 billion is their capitalization at the moment. They are sitting on about close to 200 billion worth of cash. What are they doing? Hardly any R&D. Look at Apple. Brilliant company. I love them. I got the watch to prove it. What are they doing? No, very little R&D. They take other people's IP and they put it together brilliantly. Their design-led stuff, absolutely astonishing. But they are not doing what companies in the past did, which was to invest in R&D, to invest in research which was not tied to instrumental outcomes, that was based upon the accidental possibility that something new could emerge out of all of this. And that's really, you know, you talk about Kodak, and I thought it was really astonishing that the week that Kodak went into receivership, Facebook bought Instagram for $1 billion. $1 billion. And you know, just what was said about Kodak, I mean, they were a pioneering company. They did some astonishing stuff. They went to the moon with Armstrong. They were in the cameras. They were in the medical stuff that they did. What they did in society was astonishing. And what was Instagram? It's a picture sharing application that allows you to make your pictures look like your grandfather took them. Now, that's where we've got to with digital technology. So you want to use it's fantastic, isn't it? Unbelievable. So, my watch is saying, slow down, be careful. So I do find this very, very worrying, because it says to me that what we've lost an appetite for is to take risks, is to be comfortable with unpredictability, to be comfortable with open-endedness. Why are we looking for certainty all the time? The thing that struck me, and I was just thinking about this a few weeks ago, if Albert Einstein produced his theory of relativity today out of a university, guess what would have happened? The first thing would have been, someone would have said, well, what's the practical application of E equals mc squared? Come on, give me the practical application. Where's the business model behind this? His paper was 5 pages long. You go and read that. There's nothing about business models. There's nothing about practical application. There's the beauty of a proof that created quantum science. And without quantum science, we wouldn't have had the digital revolution. We wouldn't have the convergence of high-speed communications and computational power coming together in the way that we've had, that has created all this new era of possibility. We wouldn't have had that had it not been for people like Einstein, who was told, and many of the physicists at that time who developed quantum science and quantum mathematics and quantum engineering, that they shouldn't go into physics because everything that had been discovered, that needed to be discovered, had been discovered. They did not accept that human knowledge had come to a finite end. And they opened up doors and they created immense possibilities. And if you want to know what the business model was, well, they've created industries that are worth trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars. That's what they did. Because they were not thinking about that, they were thinking about the beauty of solving a problem, of really understanding the world around us, of transforming nature. And that's what we've done as society. Nature creates a canyon, we build a bridge. Nature forgets to give us wings, we built an aeroplane. Nature gives us uranium, doesn't tell us what the hell it's for or good for, and we discover that you can use it to light up cities. We transform the world around us. We now have the possibility of building life itself at the nano level, at the level of technology that has got the most amazing potential for the future. So what are we doing? Well, we're trying to make our cars driverless. Now, think about it for a minute. I mean, at one level, I think the ability to create a vehicle that can maneuver around the infrastructure that we've created without human intervention is astonishing at one level. At another, it really fills me with dread. Because if you think about it, what are we doing? We're automating what we already do. What we're not thinking about is, if you take a driver out of a car, is it a car? It's not a car anymore, because the car has fundamentally, at the center of a car is the human being with the autonomy, the ability, the moral and ethical frameworks that allow them to drive in the streets and anticipate all unexpected things that happen. We see a ball bouncing across the street. We know that it's possible that there's going to be a child running into the street, because we understand that after so many years that you're going to teach a computer to do that. Well, if the computer was like Google, would have never did any evil on the road, it would never leave the driveway. Because how can you predict everything that's going to happen on the roads or in the car? So my concern about this is that this technology, again, has such great potential. We could redesign our transport system. We could have an on-demand mobile transport system that would completely transform what we think of as transport in the future. We could, the potential here is immense. But what are we doing? We're automating what we already do. We're not thinking beyond what we could do with this in the future. And that's really bothers me. It also bothers me this discussion about artificial intelligence and built into all of this, about giving machines ethical frameworks. And can a machine have moral agency? Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not a computer scientist. I'm not a nuclear physicist. But I can tell you one thing. Machines can't have moral agency. Moral agency is something that is inherently human. And what I mean by that is that we have the capacity to make mistakes and to be able to rectify those mistakes. Just think about, if you drove in here this morning, think about your journey. Think about some of the things that happened on that journey where you had to make certain decisions that were based upon other people making similar decisions, and what you had to do in order to avoid having an accident or getting here safely. The ability to do that is not something that you can program a machine to do, because a machine cannot anticipate. A machine, for example, cannot, if you had built a machine 200 years ago, you would have told it that ethically slavery was okay, that racism was acceptable. So the idea that we can somehow, with this technology, petrify our moral universe as it stands today into the future, forget about it. Because these things are always historically contingent and they change constantly. And more importantly, we change and we change the world around us as a result of the way that we interact with this technology. And so what I'm concerned about here is that not only are we kind of closing down the future, that we're automating what we're doing now, not thinking beyond that, we're actually closing down, potentially, what it means to be human. To me, that's the greatest asset we have. There's no, people always are concerned about the number of people on the planet. I say, bring it on. Let's have another billion people, because that's a billion brains that can solve problems in the future. That's what's so fantastic about it. Either you see, and I think society is becoming divided, between those who see mankind and people as the problem, a blight on nature, and those who see people as problem solvers. If we have got a problem around climate science, if we have got a problem around global warming or whatever, well, I believe that we'll solve that. If you look at some of the things that we are doing now at the nano level, if you look at some of the things that we're doing with materials, with the implications of this for the future of energy are immense. And who's to say that fossil fuels and all of that, we're probably in 100 years' time, 200 years' time, we'll be looking back and saying, God, those people were such idiots, thinking that fossil fuels were the way to go, when in fact we found the solution to be something completely not expected. But we're not going to find that because we are not investing in research that is open-ended, that is capable of being research for the sake of research, that is not tied to outcomes. And I don't say this lightly, ladies and gentlemen. I understand. I'm in the business world. I understand that you don't invest in things with no expectation that there's going to be a return on that investment. No business can run like that. But we are living parasitically off the gains of the past. The computational revolution that we've experienced, what happened with the microchip, all of those things came out of things like Bell Labs. Those entities that did invest in research for the sake of it, that were not tied to product or to the development of particular services. They were open-ended. We are living off that. That's the legacy that we've inherited. My concern is, what legacy are we leaving? What are we going to do to make sure that there will be new industries in the future? Industries that didn't exist at the time that Einstein created his theory. Where are the new industries going to come from? They're not going to come from us working within the confines of what exists today. Because what exists today is being disrupted by a lot of this innovation, by these new developments. And it's not going to be, to project what we have today into the future is just not feasible. Just remember, We get the technologies we deserve. You know, in the 16th and the 17th century, they had wooden ships, but then we created steel ships that sailed the oceans that, for previous generations, had been a source of fear. They then became channels for us to explore the world. Some of the greatest inventions, some of the greatest things that have happened in society were the result of accidents, were the unexpected things that happened. Columbus screwed up, but he discovered America. Can you imagine Columbus coming back to the boardroom saying, okay, your objective was to go find India, but you went and you've discovered this place called America. Get your brown box and leave by the morning because you didn't reach your targets. Can you imagine? Can you imagine that would be our approach? You know, champagne, we all like champagne. Dom Perignon, you know, the famous inventor of champagne, why accidentally had a double fermentation in the bottle and he created champagne. Pfizer, Viagra, I'm told, had an unexpected outcome, which was supposed to be a drug for blood pressure. Had an unexpected, it was the greatest, most successful drug that Pfizer ever produced. Unexpected outcome. The Post-it note, a failed glue that 3M developed. One of the most successful products in history. And so, ladies and gentlemen, my point really here in using these examples is to say that the more we go towards or are motivated by looking for predictability, for looking for to expected outcomes, the more we close down what we can possibly do with this technology. You know, we have got, when you look at the nanomaterials, the nanoscale work that is improving the surfaces of cars, that's is now being able to being used for the dressings for wounds, that can create flame retardancy of plastics. The carbon nanotube, which has got the most amazing applications for the fields of energy and the environment, for mobility, for lightweight construction, for electronics, for health and safety. Absolutely, you know, potential absolutely enormous. Food packaging. You can now have plastics that you wrap your food in that can tell you when that food is going off and can change color or whatever. So, you know, is the sell-by dates and all of that would really vastly improve the productivity of the food industry. It also, you know, has the application been found in paper that demonstrates antibacterial activity that could, for example, identify E. coli and such diseases, etc. The convergence between nanotechnologies, biotechnologies, and information technologies, we have now the capacity to develop sensors that display and detect risks both at the personal level and in nature to a degree never dreamt of by any previous generation. We could anticipate so many of the problems that we experience as natural disasters, we could actually do stuff about solving. So biotechnologies, genetic engineering, miniaturized electronics, nanomaterials, etc., could really transform the world that we live in. And that's what I'm passionate about. That's what I believe is what the future, where the future really lies. Because if we are able to bring those things together, we will create new industries. We will create new growth, new areas of value, which is really going to help us and get us out of this economic mess that we're in. Because we're not going to get out of this economic mess by cutting here, cutting there, doing a little bit of incremental innovation here, a little bit of playing around on the sides. There's no way that we can do that. We really need big ideas. We need big thinking so that we can really realize the potential of big data. So I think it's high time that we looked beyond our iPhone screens, remembered that there are still skies to conquer, there's universes to explore. We've got to build some flying cars as well. Why not? Jetpacks. Where's the jetpack? You know, I thought we were going to have them by now. Yeah, we've one. Yeah, we've seen one. Yeah. And for all those endeavors, what we got to recognize that we're going to need huge, scary, nature-exploiting, nuke-powered machines that do a little more for us than allow us to express our feelings in 140 characters. Thank you.